Today on Zero to Awesome, we're taking a step backwards because our Nissan Xterra that we're turning into an off-road camper, it don't run so good no more. So if you're just joining us, welcome, and this is our 2002 Nissan Xterra that we have named SaraTerra, and we are turning it into an off-road camper. In our last Xterra episode, you saw us making the slide out, the first of two slide outs for this magnificent beast. But after that, we ran into a problem. I turned the car on to go put it back in the garage, and things didn't go so well. So she's been getting a rougher and rougher idle over time. Wasn't really sure why. I decided to order some spark plugs, do a tune-up. Maybe that's the problem because we haven't replaced those yet when we need to. But just when the spark plugs got here, she decided to die. It's strange. Like, you'll turn the car on and it's fine. You give it some gas and it dies. So this is what's happening. We will start old SaraTerra. You can hear it's already a rough idle. And then we'll give her some gas. She went a little bit that time, but oh, yep, there she goes. So we have to fix that. So my first thought was maybe it's the fuel filter, something like that. Fuel's not getting through because it probably is the original fuel filter. Change that out. Fuel's now getting through and we still have the same problem. So I did what I do every time I have a problem. I went to the internet to try and figure out the answer. It could still be the fuel system somehow. Maybe the injectors are clogged or the fuel line's clogged somewhere. But I don't have a fuel pressure gauge to test that. So what we're going to do next is what some people on the internet indicated was their problem when they had the same symptoms, and that is replace the distributor. So this is the distributor right here, and what it does is it has a little pole that goes down to the engine and goes around with the engine. Then it tells each spark plug when to fire. And apparently there is some sort of sensor or mechanical sensor down there that can go bad, and it will cause your spark plugs to fire at the wrong times, which I kind of think is a problem. I checked the timing, and the timing is all over the place. It's not consistent at all. So there's a good chance that could be what it is. It could also be apparently the condenser in there. Those go bad. You have to change them out. So I'm just going to try and tackle everything at once. This is probably the wrong way to do it, just throwing parts at a car and hoping something works. But we're going to change the distributor today and hope that solves our problem. So distributors are not the easiest things to change. You have to get the engine at top dead center, take your distributor out, put the new one back in, and get everything all lined up. And if you don't, it's not going to work. And so what top dead center means is the first cylinder, which we have number one going over here. So that's our number one cylinder right there. We need to make sure the cylinder is all the way in the up position. And the way you can check that is there are marks on the crankshaft down here. So you either bump your crankshaft with ignition or you rotate it with a wrench, and then you get your number one cylinder to top dead center. So we're going to start by doing that. Take the old distributor out, put the new one in, see if she fires up, and if she doesn't, I don't know. We're gonna have to figure something else out. But let's get to work. So what we've got here is a long screwdriver. We're going to stick that down in cylinder numero uno. If it'll go in. And then we've got our big old wrench here to rotate our crankshaft. So whenever this screwdriver gets to the top of its rotation, that should be top dead center, and we can confirm by looking at the timing marks on the crankshaft. So it's going down right now, which means this is the opposite of what we want. So we're going to go the other way. So if you look really closely, I don't know if you can see down there, past the fan that I unbolted, right there, we've got our first timing mark, and that is top dead center, and we're just barely off. There we go. So now we should be able to, you know what, let's double check. If we take the distributor cap off, what we should see is the rotor pointed at the number 1 spark plug wire. And that will double or triple confirm that we've got top dead center here. That looks like number 1 to me. Okay, so now we can take our distributor out. And the way we're gonna do that is there's this bolt over here holding it down. We also need to, undo all these wires and things. And then this guy should come right out. We can slip the new distributor in. We wanna install it the same way as this one, make sure the rotor's lined up with the number 1 spark plug wire, put all our wires back on, and it'll fire up, I think. Okay, new distributor. We're gonna take the top off so we can, if we can get the top off, we're gonna make sure our rotor is facing the number 1 spark plug as we put it in. Okay, so our rotor is facing over there, and that's not where we want it. We want it right about there. Yeah. So as you put these in, they turn because the gears aren't actually straight, so it may take a few tries to actually get it in there right. So that is looking pretty good. We got the rotor facing the number 1 spark plug. I think we can put it back together. So we got some new plugs for SaraTerra here. We're gonna go ahead and put our new plug in cylinder number 1 so we don't have to switch it out again later. When you're doing plugs, don't forget you want anti-seize on your threads so your plug doesn't get stuck in there, and some lube for the top of your spark plug so the boot doesn't get stuck like we had a stuck boot earlier. And then for these plugs, these are plugs that you gap, so we need to set our gap to 0.044, which is right about there. And I always put my plugs in by hand first to make sure we don't do any cross threading, because that's not too fun. Okay, everything is back together, and it should theoretically start as long as the distributor was actually the problem. We did already replace the fuel pump. That was the first thing that was wrong with this when we found it in the field and it didn't start. I did check the fuel pump fuse. The fuel pump's getting power, it's working. So if this works, you either have to click that like or subscribe button if you haven't already, and if this doesn't work, everyone just click thumbs down because I deserve it and I'm an idiot. And I do realize we're gonna have to set the timing, but let's just see if she starts. Uh-oh. Okay, I don't know what happened, but I just put the engine at top dead center again, and this time I can actually see the piston in there. You probably can't, but I can see it in there. And then I took the rotor cap off to, check to make sure our rotor was at number 1 over here, and it's not anywhere close. It's like 180 degrees the wrong way. So I guess we had our engine not in top dead center. We had it at the opposite on the not compression stroke, whatever the other stroke is, exhaust stroke. And so now we get to take this out again and put it back in the other way, the right way. Okay, showing this again just to prove I'm not crazy. Rotor, top dead center, number 1 spark plug, they're lining up. If I open this up again and it's in a different spot, I'm gonna be pissed. Okay, the distributor's back around the right way again, I hope. We'll see. If it doesn't work this time, since we already have so many thumbs down, just start leaving hateful comments. That'll just help us, that'll motivate us to get things done. All right, here we go. Ooh. Well, we're running. Kind of. Okay. So y'all remember that time when I mentioned it was a really dumb idea to just throw parts at something and hope it worked, and instead of diagnosing what the actual problem is? Well, turns out I was right, and I'm really dumb. So I was trying to set the timing for the engine. I couldn't even do that because while it did start better and sound better, the engine kept dying after about 30 seconds. So then I went and I tried this little trick to try and start diagnosing what the actual problem was, because it still, to me, sounded like fuel. So you take carb cleaner, and you can spray it into your air system while the car's going, and if the car starts to respond better, then that means you have a fuel problem, because the carb cleaner is flammable and it acts like gas, basically, into your engine when you spray it in with the air. And so I was doing that. It really wasn't making much of a difference, and I was kind of depressed. And then on my last squirt, I accidentally, you probably can't see it in there, but I hit the mass airflow sensor right in there, and it killed the car. But then when I started it back up again, it ran just fine. So I accidentally sprayed this guy right here, the mass airflow sensor, with carb cleaner. It cleaned it off, and now she's working again. So check this out. Starts right up. She revs, not struggling for gas anymore. She's a healthy girl again. Well, turns out I'm really, really dumb. So I thought maybe the answer was the mass airflow sensor, and that turned out to not be it. So then I started thinking, what else could it be? So, started doing some reading on exteriors and fuel systems and blah, blah, blah. And so another item that apparently is a problem for a lot of them is the fuel sending unit, which you wouldn't think that's just like the fuel gauge. It's what tells the car how much gas there is. But apparently there was a recall because the terminals corrode and then your fuel pump doesn't get any power, and so then you don't have fuel. So we put in a new fuel sending unit. If you're wondering why that's out of the car, we're going to get there in a second. And it still didn't work. So at this point, I'm just so angry at myself for trying things, and I'm so angry at the Xterra for not working that I just stopped filming. So then I decided to replace the fuel pressure regulator, which is underneath this intake manifold. And the intake manifold did not want to come off. I wound up stripping out some bolts, which they're terrible bolts. They're like these Allen head bolts right here, and you can't get much torque on them without stripping them out. So I wound up having to weld the Allen head bit to the bolt to get it out. Actually, there's two of them. I had to do that too. So finally wound up getting the intake out, replaced the fuel pressure regulator, which is under here, and still didn't work. So at this point, I've replaced almost everything in the fuel system. What could possibly be wrong with this? So I start thinking, because that's what I do best apparently, I don't know. And I had the thought, what if it is actually the fuel pump that we just replaced? And so this is a fuel pump we bought for $20 off of Amazon, and they go out a month after you put them in. I even had it happen to an Edelbrock one on the Bel Air up there once. It worked for, 5 miles and then gave out. So pull the fuel pump out, which is why that's out too. And look at this, the hose that we replaced our brittle and broken fuel pump hose with before blew out. So the Xterra has the exact same problem as when we first got it. Actually, it's not exactly the same. It'll run a little bit, but the fuel hose is blown out here and we're not getting enough pressure. So I think we're gonna put some more fuel hose in and see if this thing works. I also got another fuel pump because, why not? Let's just get more parts. So I think I actually just found out what our actual problem is. So as I started pulling this fuel line off the old fuel pump, which is also the new fuel pump, it just started deteriorating. So I think whatever this fuel line is that I used is, I don't know how it's a fuel line if it's not safe for use in fuel, but I think we got to get some more fuel line. So for now, we're going to go ahead and put this in, but I will be taking this back out again and replacing it with something that gasoline does not eat very soon. Oh, and another reason I knew the fuel pump was probably the issue is I did what I should have done in the first place. I rented a fuel pressure testing kit from AutoZone, and we were only getting like 10 psi, which is not what you need. You need like 30 to 40 for a car like this. So let's hit the key, hit the ignition, and see what we got now. All right, ignition on. Fuel pressure is, oh, look at that. It's more than 10. That's what we need. This should do it. Wow. Listen to her purr. I'm not even kidding when I say this took like a month. Like, I've been ordering parts and they've been taking a long time to get here because this whole lockdown thing, and this has not been fun, but it's over now. I need to find some sort of new fuel line and then we should be good to go. So what have we learned today? Number 1, don't be dumb like me. Number 2, do as I say and not as I do, and go rent the freaking equipment to test your car before you start throwing parts at it. 3, fuel line does not work well with fuel. I have no idea what's up with that. It's fuel line. I swear it's fuel line. It's not just rubber hose. It should be fine, but we're going to figure that out. And finally, don't take apart half your car to fix problems that don't exist. Although, I mean, we do have a lot of new parts now. She should be good for years unless that fuel line breaks again. So until next time, don't be me. I'm pissed at myself. I need a beer. Bye. Actually, you know who I'm really pissed at? This dumb fuel line. If anyone knows why fuel line disintegrates in fuel, please tell me. That's just dumb. Oh, hey, look, I answered my own question. So it turns out the fuel line that we were using is not submersible fuel line. So this line that came with the fuel pump, you can see is a bit shinier than regular fuel line. So I'm thinking there's some type of different material they use for exterior fuel lines versus submerged fuel lines. So gonna need some more of this. SaraTerra should be fixed permanently. Until she breaks again, of course. So I said I needed a beer, right? Well, this beer is actually my reward and my punishment. So this is sour pickle beer, and the reason I have it is because pre-coronavirus times, I was at the liquor store. There was a woman in line behind me who was trying to buy 3 6-packs of this interesting beer, and the liquor store wouldn't let her. They said they had a low supply and they wanted to let everyone try it. And so I told her, you know, I saw a bunch at the grocery store just like 30 minutes ago. Why don't you go there? And so the next time I went to the grocery store, I bought some myself because this woman wanted pickle beer herself so much that she was willing to like go out to the parking lot, come back in, go out, come back in. And the liquor store was like, no, I can't do that. So I figured it must be amazing, right? It turns out that this sour pickle beer, it tastes exactly like pickles. And I think that's great if you love pickles, but I think it's terrible. And so I'm going to drink this beer. God, I'm going to think about all of the parts for SaraTerra that I shouldn't have bought. I'm going to have a really bad and relaxed time. This is terrible. Don't do what I did.